Got a dub. Let's get it.
Big dub. Let's go.
Fever dub. Bow. Woo! Dubs. It's giving sweep.
Aaliyah Boston puts on a masterclass. Lexi Hull gets a big bump on the noggin, and Aerial Powers shows that she is quite the rebounder, where the Indiana Fever blow out the Seattle Storm 95-75.
Look, the Indiana Fever just absolutely cooked the Seattle Storm, and Caitlin Clark wasn't even on the floor. Aaliyah Boston finally played like that beast we've all been begging to see. Plus, Lexi Hull turned her defense and hustle into absolute momentum killers for Seattle. What's crazy is Seattle just looked totally flat while Indiana was buzzing totally alive. And honestly, the scoreboard pretty much told you everything else you needed to know.
Good job. Good job. Good job. Yes. 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 Okay, really great stuff. That's the most complete game we put together in a long time. We made more free throws than they attempted. Yo, hey, that is a difference maker for us, and that will be a difference maker for us. 22 assists on 36 made field goals. Total team effort. Read that out.
AB, yeah, we're talking about Aaliyah Boston, because she was the story here tonight. That's the kind of performance we've been waiting for. It was just amazing to watch. And get this, Kelsey Mitchell, she set a new franchise record for most points in a single season tonight. Like seriously? Wow.
You're a dog. Let me just add to it.
Hey, PJ.
But here's the thing everyone's asking, can the Fever actually win consistently without Clark, or was this just a lucky break, a one-off? So, what do you think? Drop your thoughts in the comments below.
Just an absolutely massive win for the Indiana Fever. Really a great day for the Fever overall. There's no other way to put it. And going back in retrospect, when we look at those Minnesota Lynx games, you know, I didn't feel bad about the way the Fever played in those games. They hung tight with a Lynx team that is just genuinely a great team. By some of the metrics, historically great when you look at their net rating and the way they've been able to produce so far this year. Obviously, Feet Collier was only available for the second of those two games. Nonetheless, the Fever hung tough.
All right, let's start with the most obvious thing you saw out there. Aaliyah Boston actually played like she wanted to dominate tonight. Now, that might sound a little harsh, but anyone who watches her knows what I'm talking about. Seriously, she's talented enough to be a total nightmare for opponents, but sometimes she just looks way too calm, almost too polite out there. But against Seattle? Nah, she turned it all the way up, head down, took it strong, finished through contact. It was like she remembered, oh wait, I'm the #1 pick, not just some other big body in the paint.
Hung tough in those games, which probably should have been commended a little bit more given the competition. Then they smack the Seattle Storm. Now the Storm, not everything's great over there. I think the head coach, Noah Quinn, may be in some trouble. I mean, they have the bright future of Malonga, of course, but there's talent on that roster. And with a playoff spot on the line, they shouldn't be playing as poorly as they did in this one, where they just get dominated by the Fever. I mean, when you're suiting up Neko Gumake and Skylar Diggins and Gabby Williams, and you trade for Brittany Sykes, you expect better results than Seattle got. But on the flip side of that is the way that the Fever played. Unselfish, and the stars showed out. Because even with everybody that's been in and out of the lineup...
And listen, the Fever needed that kind of play badly. When Clark's out, their offense can really just stall sometimes, right? They end up leaning too much on Kelsey Mitchell to bail them out with all these tough contested jumpers. But here's the thing. When Boston imposes herself like that, everything changes. She was drawing fouls, getting those huge N1 opportunities, and just cleaning up on the boards. That forces defenses to collapse in on her. And suddenly, Mitchell, Sims, and Lexi Hull have all this room to operate. It's basically basketball 101, but it only works when your star big decides to show up and bring that energy.
And Lexi Hull. And Lexi Hull is tough as nails. She took a shot, a headbutt, had to leave. The hope was it wasn't a concussion. Obviously, it wasn't. She comes back in, steps into a three confidently, knocks it down. Everybody's pumped, including Stephanie White. Look at that Caitlin Clark shirt she's got on.
Now let's talk about Lexi Hull. No, She didn't drop 30 points, but she didn't have to. This woman fought through a nasty head-to-head collision with Gabby Williams, left the game, got checked out, and then she came right back. That's pure grit. The box score only gave her 5 points, but her 9 rebounds, those mattered. All those hustle plays, diving on the floor, boxing out, tipping passes, they truly mattered. Look, it doesn't go viral on social media, but those plays swing possessions, and Fever fans saw it. They know Hull's value isn't just about scoring, it's about pure toughness. Meanwhile, Seattle just looked completely cooked. That's actually pretty surprising, because on paper, they're practically neck and neck with Indiana in the standings. But in this game, they had zero depth. Their bench was a ghost town, their defense was soft, and they just let Boston do whatever she wanted in the paint. When the Fever built that big lead in the third quarter, the Storm just folded. No counter, no fight, nothing. That's definitely not the mark of a contender. The box score, though, tells a different story for Indiana. Mitchell dropped 21 on efficient shooting. Sims added 22 and hit a ridiculous bank shot 3. That finally woke the crowd up a bit. Even the role players chipped in. Everyone looked comfortable, which is pretty rare when Clark isn't orchestrating. Usually it's chaos, but this night, it just clicked. Now, here's the funny part. The crowd was quiet. Like dead quiet. Even when the Fever were up by 20. Even when they were absolutely blowing the doors off Seattle. The energy was flat. Why? Because superstars drive noise. Clark's absence was totally obvious. Fans still came, they still wore their new Nike whiteout shirts, but the arena just didn't feel electric. It felt like a routine Tuesday night game. That's the Clark effect right there. With her, every possession feels like theater. Without her, it's solid basketball, but it's just missing that spark. But that doesn't take anything away from what Boston and Hull did, though. In fact, it actually makes it even more impressive. They didn't just fill in, they proved this team can absolutely survive a night without Clark if they step up. And that really matters for their playoff hope. The Fever are hovering right there in the middle, fighting for good seeding, and wins like this are exactly how you build that cushion.
Brilliant all season long. Then Aaliyah Boston was a beast in this one too. You know, she really asserted herself, didn't have to deal with that front line that she had to deal with in Minnesota, and just that overall length and talent that Minnesota has that can be overwhelming. Seattle a little bit more disjointed, and good feed by Howard, by the way, there too.
But hey, let's not act like everything was perfect out there. Stephanie White's rotations continue to make absolutely no sense sometimes. Kalani Brown, for example, got barely 3 minutes before being shoved back in during garbage time, and there's just no explanation for it. It feels like White just picks names out of a hat some nights, and that's not how you develop a bench. You just can't lean on Boston and Mitchell forever. Someone else has to grow. Plus, let's talk about Boston's layups. Yeah, she scored big, but she also bricked a few absolute gimmies, kind of like Angel Reese has done lately. It's a weird trend with young bigs. They have great touch in traffic, but then miss the wide-open bunnies. Fans noticed it, and while they were relieved she still finished strong, it's definitely something she needs to clean up. The bigger takeaway from all this is pretty simple. The Fever are capable of beating good teams without Clark, but only when their stars truly wake up. Boston has to dominate, Hull has to hustle, Mitchell has to score efficiently, and Sims has to bring that energy. If any of those pieces disappear, the whole thing just collapses. Seattle's collapse also exposes a bigger truth about the league right now. Outside of just a few top teams, depth is practically a myth. Rosters look great on paper, but then they just fall apart when the benches check in. That's why the Fever, even with Clark out, can look like world beaters against a team like the Storm, and then turn around and lose to the Dallas Wings. Consistency, man, that's the wall. Still, this game was a powerful reminder of what Indiana can be. Boston as a wrecking ball, Hull as the glue, Mitchell as the bucket getter, and Sims as the spark. Add Clark back in, and that's a seriously scary lineup. Without her, it's just enough to get by if everyone plays up. And the haters? Yeah, they'll downplay it, they'll say Seattle had an off night, or that the Fever just got lucky. But here's the thing, the scoreboard doesn't care. A win is a win, and when it comes without your biggest star, it's twice as meaningful. What's more, this Fever win wasn't just about the box score. It was about showing they can punch back without leaning on Caitlin Clark's gravity every single second of the game. Everyone knows Clark's presence just warps defenses. She pulls double teams, forces rotations, and opens the floor for shooters. Without her, defenses sag and dare the Fever to beat them straight up. That's what makes this result so huge. It wasn't just luck, it was pure execution. Let's dive deeper into Aaliyah Boston's role for a second. The number one criticism fans have lobbed her way all season is her lack of aggression. She has the size, the strength, the footwork, but too often she just drifts to the high post, swings the ball, and lets others take the lead. Against Seattle, she finally flipped that switch. She banged inside, went through contact, and she demanded the ball. That's what Fever fans have wanted since draft night. Be the alpha in the paint. When Boston is aggressive, everything changes. Opposing bigs suddenly foul more, defenses collapse to help, leaving shooters open, and guards get driving lanes. This game showed exactly why Boston was hyped as a generational center. She doesn't need Clark feeding her perfect entry passes. She can create her own offense with positioning and sheer force. That's the version of Boston Indiana needs every single night. Now let's give Lexi Hull her due again. This woman has been through it lately, from catching elbows to head collisions to inconsistent scoring nights. Hull has been roughed up, but what separates her from role players who just fade away is her willingness to grind. 9 rebounds as a guard is no joke. She fought through pain, stayed locked in defensively, and made all those little plays coaches just love to point out. But let's be real, those little plays decide games. You can't blow out a team unless someone is winning the dirty work. And that was the head-to-head collision with Gabby Williams could have taken her out. Most players sit the rest of the night. But Hull came back. That's toughness you simply can't teach. Did she shoot the lights out? No, but without her effort on the boards, the Fever don't extend that lead. When your second-year superstar is in street clothes, you need role players who embrace the chaos, and Hull absolutely filled that gap. Meanwhile, Seattle looked lost. Jewel Lloyd is a bucket machine, but she just didn't have enough support. The Storm's bench gave them almost nothing, and that's just embarrassing for a team fighting for playoff positioning. They looked flat, like they expected Indiana to just roll over without Clark. Instead, they got punched in the mouth. That's the core problem with Seattle. They rely on 1 or 2 players to carry them, and when those players get slowed down, there's no plan B. And now, let's talk about Stephanie White again. I honestly don't know what she's doing with her rotations, and I'm not sure she knows either. Kalani Brown riding the bench for almost the entire game makes no sense. You're up by 20 points. That's the perfect time to develop a young player, right? Wrong. Apparently. White just keeps burying her and then tossing her in for garbage minutes. It's frustrating for fans because development is how you turn depth into real strength. Instead, she rides her vets into the ground and then wonders why the team looks gassed in the fourth quarters. But credit where it's due, White did push the right buttons for Boston. Whether it was design plays or just letting Boston eat inside, the game plan finally ran through her. That's how it should look. Boston doesn't need to defer when Clark is out. She's the anchor. The team should live and die with her aggression in those games. If White can convince her to keep that same energy when Clark returns, the Fever suddenly have a 1-2 punch no team wants to deal with. Now let's address the elephant in the room, the crowd. The Fever crowd was quiet, and that matters because atmosphere is half the experience in pro sport. You'd think a 30-point blowout would have fans screaming, right? Instead, it sounded like a church service. Why? Because Clark wasn't there. She is the show. Fans love Boston, they respect Hull, but Clark is the magnet. Without her, the energy just flatlined. That doesn't mean the win is meaningless, but it just proves what we already knew: superstars put butts in seats and voices in the rafters. It also highlights how spoiled Fever fans have gotten. A year ago, they would have killed for any kind of blowout. Now, they shrug off a 30-point victory because Clark isn't on the floor. That shows how high expectations have climbed in year 2 of Clark's pro career. People don't just want wins. They want fireworks, and that's not a bad thing. It means the bar has been raised. This win also adds serious weight to Indiana's playoff chances. They're in a tight race, and every single win counts, especially against teams in the same tier. Beating Seattle wasn't just about pride, it was about tiebreakers, seeding, and momentum. If Clark returns soon, Indiana could absolutely ride this into a solid playoff spot. If she stays out longer, wins like this prove they won't crumble without her. That's a huge psychological boost for the locker room. Now let's look at the broader WNBA picture. This is a league starving for rivalries and big storylines. Indiana versus Seattle isn't exactly Lakers versus Celtics. But games like this add fuel. Boston versus Seattle's bigs, Hull versus Gabby Williams, Clark watching from the bench in Nike's new CC gear. It all builds the narrative. Fans need storylines, not just scores. The Fever delivering a blowout without Clark gives people a reason to talk. And let's not gloss over how ironic it is that Indiana, the team accused all season of being too dependent on Clark, just dismantled a playoff-level opponent without her. The haters can't spin this one. They can say Clark carries the franchise, but this game shows the roster isn't empty. Boston and Hull reminded everyone they're pros too. They can win games, not just watch Clark score. The key going forward, consistent. Boston has to bring this level of force every single night. Hull has to keep grinding on defense and the boards. Mitchell has to keep shooting efficiently, and Sims has to stay engaged. If they can replicate this formula, Indiana won't just survive Clark's absence. They'll truly thrive when she comes back. So let's close it out with this. This was a statement win. Maybe not a championship-level statement, but definitely a respect-level statement. It says, we can beat you without our superstar. That's huge for confidence, huge for morale, and absolutely huge for shutting up critics. So there you have it. Aaliyah Boston played like the star she was drafted to be. Lexi Hull battled through pain and totally owned the hustle game. And the Fever absolutely destroyed Seattle without Caitlin Clark. That's a big deal. But what do you think? Was this proof Indiana's deeper than people say, or just a one-off? Drop your take, hit like, and subscribe for more.